What is going on, everybody? Zyonik here. And in today's video, we are going to talk about the formula that I use when it comes to competing in my Silph Arena tournaments. And this can definitely work for the Go Battle League, which is going to be coming out in early 2020. So if you guys are watching this then, this is going to be a great guide because it is not specific Pokemon. It's a category or a team building guide for your 3 Pokemon. And it provides you with great coverage, it provides you with flexibility, and it provides you the opportunity to win if you lose the lead. So without further ado, let's get right into this Pokemon Go PvP team building guide. So what is this team building formula? Well, it is a hard counter, soft counter, or a safe switch. So what this means is when you're building your team of 3, the Pokemon you lead with, you want it to be something that's very devastating if you get the lead. So for example, if we lead with a Swampert as our hard counter lead, and they lead with something like a Steelix or something like a Charizard or something of that sort, where Hydro Cannon will absolutely destroy, that's a positive win for us. But the thing is we want a coverage as a hard counter, a hard stop to something that beats Swampert as our lead. So that's why we have the hard counter combination. How I like to think of this is Batman and Robin. So we find that if you're in a tournament, so you get to see what Pokemon they have, our Batman and Robin are usually, we pick the lead based on what we think is going to do best against their team or predicting what we can counter with our lead, and then we want a hard coverage in the back. Now, the soft counter or the safe switch is generally a Pokemon that has similar attributes of being tanky. So Pokemon like Azumarill, Hypno, things of that nature. They have flexibility in their charge moves, meaning they can cover things that could possibly beat them because of their charge moves. So you want flexibility, you want tankiness, and you want coverage with moveset. So it's a very generalist thing, but you also want it to have the capability to beat the Pokemon that beats your lead, if that makes sense. But it's not a hard stop. So we're going to look at a few examples. Now, these team building examples are from tournaments that I won. They're from my Rainbow Cup that I went 4-0 in. They're from my Regional Cup that I went 6-0 in. They're from my Sinister Cup that I went 4-1 in. So and as you guys know, lots of great players do this. I just don't think anyone's really talked about it. But if you guys get confused, maybe when it comes to the tournament, you have no clue what 3 Pokemon to pick, this is a great way to start. Hard counter, soft counter. And the order is important. That soft counter, we want it next to the switch button. So the bottom right, we want this to be our 3rd pick. And why is that? Well, when you're in the moment and you're losing the lead, so you lead a Swampert into a Venusaur, you want to be able to click the switch button and not have to think, right? You want it to be reactionary as fast as possible because Swampert is 4 times weak to grass. So if you're leading against something that has Razor Leaf like Tropius, something like that, we want to switch instantly. So we put this in the order of hard counter lead, hard counter in the back or the middle pick, and soft counter safe switch closest to the switch button. So if we get in trouble, we hit it very, very quickly. All right, so this was the formula that I used for my Rainbow Cup. Now there's gonna be a link down in the description to that tournament video if you guys wanna go check it out. But this is pretty much what I use, and I didn't really figure it out until I was at the tournament, kind of in the midst of it. You guys will recognize that I used these same Pokemon, just not in the correct order, because as PvP has been developing, you start to learn these strategies the longer you play. So this is what I kind of figured out at the end of the cup. So I led with the hard counter. Now my team of 6, I had triple water on it. So I had Quagsire, Azumarill, and Lantern. I wanted them to bring Venusaur. I wanted them to feel like it was okay to lead Venusaur. So I brought Fortress. Now, Fortress having a great moveset of Rock Tomb to cover the Charizard that was in the tournament, and Earthquake to cover the Lantern that was in the tournament. Provided me with a lot of flexibility, and on top of that, it's a hard wall to Venusaur, meaning I didn't have to shield, and I could just farm Venusaur down. So, we led with Fortress. Now, my hard counter to that was most teams that I faced either had a Ninetales or a Charizard, which Quagsire's Stone Edge will absolutely decimate. So that is why I had Quagsire. Now Quagsire with Mud Shot, Earthquake, and Stone Edge is a fantastic closer when I had a shield. So my mindset was to get Quagsire to endgame, taking out the grass type Pokemon with Fortress and Azumarill so that Quagsire could sweep endgame with shield advantage. So that's why he was my hard counter. Now my soft counter safe switch was Azumarill. And you might be saying, well, you know, you lead Fortress, they lead Charizard, so that's a bad matchup for us. You're going to switch to Azumarill and let them bring in the Venusaur? Yes I am. Azumarill has Ice Beam, and it can get to it relatively quickly. On top of that, in a fresh fight, Azumarill can survive a Frenzy Plant. So not only do I not need to give up a shield, but I can also get to an Ice Beam. Now the Ice Beam is going to chunk about 90% of the health from Venusaur. So they have one of two options. They are either going to shield or they're going to lose all their health. And on top of that, people aren't that quick when it comes to switching. So when I bring in Azumarill to the Charizard, I'm already going to get off 2, 3, possibly 4 bubbles by the time the Venusaur comes out. So by the time it's out, I'm already near an Ice Beam. I'm right there. So that is why he was my safe switch. It was a false sense of security. And on top of that, when they did take out my Azumarill, which is what I wanted him to do, I'd bring in Fortress, farm it down. Now the Charizard comes back in, right? But Charizard's 4 times weak to Rock. Rock Tomb. We just farm down Venusaur. So that way, I'm either going to take out the Charizard or get his last shield. What does that allow me to do now? Allows me to bring in Quagsire and sweep the game. So that was the formula that I used for the Rainbow Cup, and it worked out really well. Again, hard counter lead, hard counter in the back, soft counter safe switch, bulky with coverage. So we're going to move into the next tournament that I won and the formula that I used. So for my regional tournament, there was a lot of different lines of 3 that I used, but this one was like my bread and butter towards the end of the tournament because of a few things. So firstly, there was a lot of Metachams in the tournament. If you guys participated in regionals last year, Metacham was huge and Haunter was relatively unknown or unused because people were using a lot of Sableye. And at the time, I didn't have a Sableye. So my game plan was lead with Probopass because a lot of people have Skarmory, and Skarmory was just a general great lead. It can do well against a lot of things. Its only weakness is fire and electric, so I wanted to hard lead Probopass. Now Probopass was always very weak to Metachams, in which we saw a lot, so people usually brought the Skarmory and the Metacham. So my hard counter and soft counter then was hard counter with Haunter and soft counter safe switch with Azumarill. And again, if you guys want to check out this tournament, link down in the description to that. You guys can watch the whole way through. But this is just an example of a combination that I used, where if I faced off against the Skarmory, they brought in the Metacham, then I could bring in the Haunter safely. If I faced against Metacham, then I bring in the Azumarill, and with the moveset that I had great coverage generally with some good bulk. If they brought in the Venusaur, again, we have that Ice Beam, things of that nature. So that's how the Regional Cup worked for me. All right, so the Sinister Cup, which we saw recently, it was October's tournament. This is what I led. Now, the hard counter on the defense, so the Steelix pick could have been Bastiodon. I just like Steelix a little better, but this was the combination that I used. I used Poliwrath as a lead in case they led something like a Bastiodon or they led something like a Steelix. That's what I wanted to do. Having the move set of Ice Punch and Dynamic Punch gave me great coverage. Bubble, a great fast move. So now Poliwrath, being a fighter, was definitely going to be weak to things like Cresselia. So in the back, we had 2 things that could cover that. So we have the hard counter of Steelix, which again could have been Bastiodon. It's a more harder counter to the Ghosts. So we had Steelix, and then a south counter safe switch, which was found very early in the tournament, which was Dusclops. Dusclops was extremely bulky with Hex, Shadow Punch, and Fire Punch. It didn't matter what you faced in the tournament other than a Bastiodon, which is again why I say I might have gone for Bastiodon in hindsight. But it did really well for me. And the thing is your safe switch soft counter doesn't have to win, guys. That's what I want to just emphasize. You don't always have to win the one-on-one Pokemon battle. So just because you lose lead and you bring in the safe switch doesn't mean that safe switch has to lose the next or win the next fight. You can let it gracefully lose, come in and farm. So if you guys want to know more about that, the video that I made yesterday, you guys can find that link down in the description about the best way to win or how to win your Pokemon Go PvP battles. I really explain that, so you guys can check that out. But again, this was my winning formula for the Sinister Cup, and we saw very similar things for people who went 8-0. Instead of Steelix, they had Bastiodon, so it was Poliwrath, Bastiodon, and Dusclops, or a Medicham, Bastiodon, Dusclops. So again, really great options there. Now for open Great League play, now this can apply to Ultra League and Master League. So again, I want to emphasize to you guys that it doesn't matter if I chose the Swampert, or if I chose a Venusaur, or if I chose a Medicham. What matters is your coverage. So a hard counter, soft counter. That's what's important. So for open Great League, again, Swampert and Skarmory are probably the most dynamic hard counters in there, because everything that Swampert loses to, which is going to be those grass type Pokemon, and he's definitely going to get beat up by some counters, Skarmory can cover that very well. And the thing is, the things that Skarmory loses to, which is going to be electric and fire, Swampert can cover that, right? He's going to have Mud Shot, Hydro Cannon, and then possibly Earthquake or Sludge Wave, depending. But remember, he's got that resistance to electric. So they are probably the most polarized combo in the Great League in terms of hard countering the other's weaknesses, which is again why I'm emphasizing this. So leading Swampert, again, great lead, can bust a lot of shields. But if you run into a Venusaur, or you run into a Razor Leaf user, Tropius, Roserade, Victory Bell, Ludicolo, something like that, we want to have a soft counter. So a lot of those Pokemon are going to be poison typing. So Victory Bell, grass, poison, going to be weak to confusion. So Hypno, going to be a great generalist. Why? If you guys take a look at Hypno's moveset, he has so many options when it comes to your charge move. You can have Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Fire Punch, Shadow Ball if it's Legacy, Psyshock if it's Legacy. So he's a box of tricks when it comes to coverage. He's very bulky, and he's just a great generalist. So he's going to be our safe switch. Now, if we lead with Swampert and they lead with, I don't know, a Blaziken or something, or a Charizard, right? We're going to be able to get to Hydro Cannon so quickly that they won't be able to do anything about it. They switch in that Victory Bell. That's where we can switch in the Skarmory and farm it down. So again, hard counter, soft counter. So I hoped this helped you guys. Now this can be applied to any Pokemon Go PvP battle that you do. Because of the fact that our battles are always 3 Pokemon, the lead is the most important thing, and having coverage for it is the next most important thing. So whatever you decide to lead with, it can be anything. Honestly, so many Pokemon are so good in every single league. Now, again, for Master League, you don't want to be using a Psyduck or something like that, but you guys understand. So leading with a hard counter, something that's very punishing, and having a hard counter coverage to that is fantastic. And then on top of that, soft counter, safe switch. And I know I've repeated myself so many times in this video, but I really want to ingrain this in your guys' head, that this is a winning combination. This is what I've used in every single tournament that I have won. In tournaments that I have lost, I did not follow this. So it just goes to show that this works out really well. And I will say the only thing that can interrupt this combination is if, one, you know their team of 6, and their team of 6 doesn't have a stop to a Pokemon. So let's take a look at the Ferocious Cup right now. We all know that Alolan Ninetales with Charm is very deadly, and it's a great counter to the Dark type Pokemon. But imagine you faced off against someone who didn't have a counter to Alolan Ninetales. They didn't have a Steel type Pokemon. They didn't have a Poison, you know, the Nidoqueen, the Skuntank, any of that. They literally had triple Dark and triple Water, something like that. That's where this kind of gets interrupted, because we're going to lead with Alolan Ninetales. It's going to beat every single Pokemon on their team. And then in the back, you want something that's very general to them, because you know that even if they switch into something, doesn't matter what it is, it's not going to beat your Alolan Ninetales. So that's the only thing that really interrupts it. But when you face off in tournaments, most people are going to have great coverages. So this is why we emphasize the hard counter, soft counter. And on top of that, we have no clue what the Go Battle League is going to be about, but I can guarantee you that you are going to want to know this combination. So if you guys have friends who are new to PvP, if you guys are watching this and you are new to PvP, this is the formula, guys. This is what we use, and then from there it comes down to experience, shield baiting, and knowledge of the game in order to win. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope you guys found it informative. So be sure to smash that like button, comment down below, and let me know what you guys think of this formula. It's honestly been one of the most amazing things that has been allowed me to be so successful when it comes to tournaments, and it always varies, which is great. There's no like perfect set of 3 Pokemon. What there is balance, guys. So again, hard counter, soft counter. That is how I like to think about it. So like always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.